My name's Amy Fatzinger, and I'm loved and I'm beautiful. It's taken the Lord 18 years to teach me that and to convince me of that. So I grew up in a home where we went to church every Sunday. We never missed a Sunday. I knew all the Bible stories. I never really saw any evidence that the Lord was a personal God. He was kind of just out there. I felt always like he was waiting for me to screw up, and which I did often. And I did give my life to Christ when I was 9, every single day. Every single night I asked him into my heart. But once I hit my teenage years, there really wasn't any foundation of who I was or who he was. I moved to California when I was 19. I married my high school sweetheart, much to the chagrin of everyone that knew me. And I lived a life very much outside of how God would have me live. And I had never really rebelled in high school. I mean, in the classic sense, I didn't drink and party and all that. But then once I moved to California, a whole different lifestyle opened up, and the man that I married was not a believer. And very quickly, our marriage took an interesting turn, and he was very verbal about how displeased he was with the way I looked and the way I was in general, and constantly telling me how ugly and disgusting and gross I was, which was awesome. And you hear those things long enough and you start to believe them. And the person that I'd always been, I never would have kind of taken that. It just became really something I was very used to hearing. The harder I would try to lose weight or to become more beautiful, what I thought he wanted or he would define as beautiful, the meaner he got. He never screamed or yelled or hit or anything like that. It was just a constant dripping of, just a constant labeling of, you're not attractive, you shouldn't ever go without makeup, you're not anything that anyone would desire, and really you're not loved and or cherished or any of these things that you just hope as a woman to hear from your husband. But I was working full time and I had a lot of friends, but drugs were very mainstream, and of course I started drinking. I was 19 when I moved out there, and so I would go work during the day and party during the night. After I got home after I got done with work, we would go and it was just a bad scene. I'd kind of gotten mixed up in some, substances that I should not have. Every once in a while, I would think about the Lord and think, that I would just give him a second thought, but I would just quickly dismiss it because of the lifestyle I was leading. And then I had a friendship at work that was a man who could see. I'd come in to work every morning with puffy eyes and, looking pretty run down, and just from crying and feeling very unsatisfied with life. And very quickly, he began to tell me just how beautiful I was and how much worth I had. And I was kind of primed and ready for my heart to leave in that respect. And we started to have an affair. Alcohol and drugs were definitely involved the first time. Most times it was not a time that I was proud of at all. It was a time where I was just searching for affection. I was just searching to fill that for a counter to what I already believed about myself. And so someone telling me that I'm beautiful and that I matter and that I'm fun to be around and things like that. I was just completely, it took no time at all for me to fall. And that carried on for about a year. And I kept feeling what I know to be conviction now, but I kept just feeling very, very guilty. My husband had no idea. Finally, I cut it off completely. I couldn't take it anymore. And a little bit of time passed, and then I found out that I was pregnant. When I told my husband that I was pregnant, we were at about the 3-year mark of marriage, and I knew he was going to be upset because he had been verbal about not wanting to have children yet. I called him at work and I said, I'm pregnant, and I was I was halfway hoping he was going to be really excited about it. And because, when you tell your husband that you're expecting a baby, you kind of hope that someone will share that, excitement. All I'd ever wanted to be was a mother. And so I called him at work and told him that we were going to have a baby. And he completely freaked out and was very angry and said that he did not have room in his life for a child, and that I could either have him or I could have the baby. And I was like, oh, well then, of course I'll pick you. Things have been going so well up until now. And so I can't remember the time frame, but I think it was probably about a week later. I started, since it was my first child, I didn't understand the whole the timetable thing. And I started to do some math and realized that when I had ended it with this other man, when I counted backwards, when someone told me trying to figure out when the baby was conceived, I was absolutely had no idea whose child I was carrying at that point. The shame that hit me at that moment was so unbelievable, and the realization that I was going to have to expose myself to my family and to my husband and to my friends, it was just devastating. And I thought for sure, I have never felt so disgusting in all of my life, and so hopeless, honestly, as in that moment. I ended up going to a Planned Parenthood clinic, and I thought, well, he doesn't want the baby, and okay, we'll just get rid of the baby, even though everything I had ever wanted was to be a parent, be a mother. I sat down on the table and I talked to the nurse, and they're there completely to, they're there to do their thing and not to talk you out of or into anything. And I'm not entirely sure that I even spoke with a human, honestly. I feel like the Lord intervened that day and spared Brendan's life. And I sat on the table and I told her what was going on, and I told her, the scenario that I was facing, and she just said, do you have other options? And I said, I can tell my mom and I can go home to Georgia. And she said, then you run home to mama. You don't want this, run home to mama. And I was like, okay. And, my heart was so broken, and I knew that my life was about to change. I knew that it would never be the same. I went home and I told my husband what I had done, and there was just so much. There was no affect. He didn't yell, he didn't scream, there was nothing, which was surprising and somehow hurt me even more. But then I had to get on the phone and I had to tell my mom what I had done, and she was devastated. And but she said to me, come home, we're gonna take care of this child, we're gonna get you through this, this child is welcome. The first thing I did after I talked to my mother was I called my friend Amy, who I had strategically not talked to very often while I was living that life in California, just because of anything that reminded me of how deep in a pit I'd fallen. Was something that I really just wanted to avoid. And I called Amy and I told her, and her reaction was just, when do I get to meet the baby? And I thought, oh my gosh, she's a Christian, she's a believer, and she is not condemning me. And then I called another one of my friends who was also a believer, and he said, I just want to know when I can hear the heartbeat. That was the whole reaction. And I just thought, is this how I started to feel, is this how the Lord feels about me? Is this how he's is this how he's reacting? Is it possible that he would want me back after all this time? So I came home pregnant and alone. I had the baby, Brendan. He's so awesome and beautiful and wonderful. And honestly, I don't think a day goes by that I don't look at him and see forgiveness. And I can say that in all honesty. He just turned 18, and I honestly believe I accepted Christ. And I say accepted Christ. I feel like I met him for the first time when I was pregnant with him. I had Brendan. He was my husband's, as a little side note. And my husband had nothing to do with, he divorced me, obviously, right after that. right after he was born. And that was another really rough time, really rough transition. But in that time, the Lord he had just gotten a hold of my heart. And so I felt called by him for the first time. I felt like I knew he wanted me. That was the one thing that I encountered at the church in Athens that I had never experienced before. This husband heart, this pursuer, this passionate, desperately in love with me, God. Never met him before. And so I started to encounter him in worship and in ways that I felt like he was very much there. And the first thing that the Lord really began to tackle was, first of all, he showed me, my name means beloved. And that when he speaks over me, he's speaking beloved over me. But in the Song of Solomon, there was a scripture that said, "You've stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. You've stolen my heart with one glance of your eyes." And I just thought, what in the world? Oh my gosh. And so I started to feel like a girl, someone that was desirable to the Lord. And it was directly, I realize now looking back, he was directly speaking the opposite of what my earthly husband had been speaking over me. That this man was telling me that I had no worth, that I was not beautiful, that I could do nothing right. And then the Lord came and said, "I dreamed you up. My thoughts toward you outnumber the grains of sand. They're precious. And you have stolen my heart. You have stolen my heart, my bride." And I just was like, my heart just went, I had never been pursued by a human in that fashion, never been told those things. I really dove in, just trying to figure out, who is this guy? Why does he feel this way about me? And then I finally got to the point where I was like, I don't even care why. I knew that he did. And that just began that whole, that healing that comes only from believing truth. And when you start to realize the creator of the universe is desperately in love with me.
Then I'm beautiful because you say so. Because you say so.